Hey, NFL fans, welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins on the Atlanta Sports Unlimited channel. With Tom Pollen, I'm Dave Holcomb. We have a really full show for you today, because we're still a few weeks away from training camp. It's usually the downtime for the NFL, but we got a lot of fun topics to get to today, and we already have a cat appearance here in the background behind Tom.
Zozo's just looking out the window right now, just taking it easy and taking her nap.
She's pondering those fantasy quarterbacks.
Absolutely, yep.
That's one of the topics that we're going to get to today. I've mentioned a few different times that you should wait on your fantasy quarterback. I'm going to lay out the argument for why that is, why you should wait on your fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that.
Is that sarcasm?
I'm kidding with you.
And I think we're going to hit upon Matt Ryan a little bit as well. Always a popular topic here in Atlanta. I think the debate this week is Matt Ryan still a top 10 quarterback? So we can discuss that. There is a difference between top 10 real life quarterback and top 10 fantasy quarterback, but at least today we'll talk fantasy. Is Matt Ryan in our top 10 heading into 2021? And I know, Tom, you have a few topics you want to get to as well. You wrote an article this week, really great piece on 10 players that were underrated in the 2020 season and players that are on your radar to break out in 2021, at least break out in the sense of, become bigger names in 2021.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you go to my site, Football from A to Z, WordPress.com, and I'm going to try and publish a lot more now that we're getting closer to the season. So, keep checking the site for updates and new posts. But, yeah, because we talked a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, about players that are overlooked. And we made a point of Aluakon from linebacker for Atlanta, and I think he's drastically overlooked around the league as a quality linebacker. And I wanted to see if there were other players that I could make a list out of. So I found 10 players who I think are very worthy of attention and will be worthy of attention coming up soon.
So we'll get to that probably in the second half hour of the show. Send us your comments. We love reading them on air, and tweet at us if you're listening on replay at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. And before we get rolling, don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and then subscribe to Atlanta Sports Unlimited for all your Atlanta sports needs. And like our video on Facebook as well.
Yep. All the time. All kinds of places to find us, and we like to be liked. So.
Who doesn't?
I know. So, take a look around for us because, Dave and I have fun a lot of, every week when we do this. So we want to get everybody else to have fun talking football. Because we're getting there. We're getting there fast.
We are getting there fast. Yeah, July 10th already. A like for us is like a pet for Zozo. It's very similar.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Right.
So I was breaking down some quarterback numbers this morning, Tom, to form my argument for why you should wait for your quarterback. Okay. And I was looking at two different sources, really. Fantasy Pros is my favorite source for rankings for really any fantasy sport, but particularly football. It's really the only fantasy sport I'm playing these days. And they have great breakdowns of ranking based on expert advice. Then you can rank them based on their average draft position. So you can really see who's getting overdrafted, who's being undervalued. But today I looked at just the top 18 quarterbacks according to Fantasy Pros. Then I looked at Fantasy Pros at least I didn't find a place where they had projections for the 2021 season. So then I headed over to ESPN, the specific league that I was in last year, and looked at what they're projecting these 18 quarterbacks to score. And I got this idea from a fantasy football magazine. Oh, back when I started playing fantasy football more than a decade ago. But the way you calculate a player's value in your fantasy league, you take the number of points that they're projected. You rank out every single quarterback or whatever you out to top 20. And if you're in a 10-team league and you have one starting quarterback, 10 quarterbacks are going to start every week.
Right.
Easy math there. So then the baseline for the minimum amount of fantasy points you want from your quarterback is the 10th ranked quarterback based on the projections for the 2021 season. Following me so far?
Yeah.
And then you look at the points that are projected for every quarterback and you award them a value number. And the value number is the difference based on the base number that you set for your league. So if you're in a 10-team league, the 10th quarterback is 0. His value is 0. If you're in a 12-team quarterback league, his value, the 12th quarterback ranked based on the projections, is 0. So Patrick Mahomes in my 10-team league is projected 372 fantasy points. That is 67 points above the baseline of 0 in my league. Josh Allen is 70 points above the baseline. So you give everybody this, it's called, according to the magazine that I read, they called it the X number. It's your X factor, your calculating value. And quarterback values, those X numbers, are generally not as high as running backs and quarterbacks. Running backs and wide receivers. I didn't do wide receivers yet using this formula, but I did running backs, and Christian McCaffrey is plus 123. It's a whole 50 points higher than Patrick Mahomes. That's no secret to anybody. Of course, Christian McCaffrey is going ahead of Patrick Mahomes in fantasy leagues. But
right, he does it all. I mean, he touchdowns, he catches passes, and he gives you the entire package at running back. Right.
But then you go further down the running back list, and Cam Akers is plus 70. Austin Eckler is plus 60. He's in the same neighborhood as Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, which I think if you're an expert fantasy player, you also already know that I'm drafting Cam Akers ahead of Patrick Mahomes. But if you're a beginner listening, you might think, Patrick Mahomes, he's an MVP. Josh Allen, MVP candidate. I want to get him before Cam Akers. Actually, no. Cam Akers is just as valuable and arguably more valuable. And the reason for that is there's more running backs that start. So if you do the same X value, calculations where you figure out how many points they're scoring and subtract the base number from that total, you're getting a much higher number because the base number in your 10-team league for running backs, if you have a flex where running backs also start in that spot, the base number is the 25th ranked running back. So Christian McCaffrey is projected 294 fantasy points. Mahomes and really all the quarterbacks, all the elite quarterbacks, are 300 fantasy points.
Right.
Above McCaffrey. McCaffrey has a much higher value because there's more running backs that need to play in your fantasy league.
Well, that's true. Yeah, right.
So that's really the argument for why quarterbacks are not as valuable as running backs. There's more running backs that are in your lineup every single week. And in real life, there's 32 starting quarterbacks, 32 starting running backs. A lot of those guys nowadays are sharing the load. So they're not necessarily, starters in the old school sense. But But a lot of these running backs are still more valuable than the average quarterback. If you're going to reach for a Mahomes and Allen, they have a much, maybe I shouldn't say much higher, but there's only 3 quarterbacks that have according to my data. Everybody's data is going to be different based on the number of teams in your league and the projections you use. but there's 3 quarterbacks that have a plus 50 rating, a plus 50 value number. And there's 14 running backs that have a plus 50 value.
I see.
So you want to, if you are going to reach for a quarterback, you got to kind of go all in and reach for the top guy. But if you're going to get, even a Russell Wilson, who's an MVP candidate, Dak Prescott, who was great before his injury, Justin Herbert, who we love on the show, that we really think is a budding star. I mean, their X value is less than 15. And there are 22, 23 running backs that have a plus value of that number as well. And then, that's not even counting the wide receivers. So if you throw the wide receivers in there, I'm sure there's 20 more players. So if you really want to get full value at quarterback, you got to wait to pick Wilson, Herbert, Prescott around the 60th pick.
That's a good way of looking at it, and as I say, I've always kind of got my couple of running backs, and you start thinking, well, I got to get my quarterback in here somewhere because
well, that's what everyone thinks.
Right. Yeah. And saying you're not going to take the human cheat code and Patrick Mahomes over somebody like Cam Akers is, a little surprising. But it's a good way of looking at it. You're still getting a lot of points weekly out of your quarterback. That's kind of what puzzles me. Well, not every quarterback, but looking at somebody like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, who I think Josh Allen actually outscored Mahomes last year a little bit.
He did. Yeah.
So Allen gives you the running aspect too. He can run the ball over the end zone. So
right. He was the Bills' best running back.
He was. I know. It's amazing. Yes, he was. So, but what do you think about, if you've got, like, say, a Tyreek Hill, wouldn't you want a Pat Mahomes to try and team up and double your fun?
Well, I can't speak for people that want to pick players based on doubling up or personal reasons. That seems like a personal reason. Oh, I want to get the double points, or oh, I'm a Chiefs fan, or oh, it's just fun to watch Patrick Mahomes and throw to Tyreek Hill, so I want to get both of them on my team. I try not to draft that way. I try to draft based on these numbers and based on the statistics. I draft Ravens players. I draft Patriots players. I don't hold grudges against teams that I don't like in real life. So I try not to, make those kinds of decisions. But if you want to do that, if your viewing experience is greatly enhanced by having Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill on your fantasy team, then I can't say don't go for it.
I'm not saying that you're doing it just for fun or it's just a whim. I'm thinking maybe you're getting, you pick up points when Tyreek Hill scores a touchdown. You pick up points when Patrick Mahomes throws one.
Yeah.
What do you think of that kind of strategy? And apparently you have nothing to say about it.
Well, I guess I don't. I guess I don't. I don't think there's a positive or negative to it. The positive is when they both have a great game, you're going to score big. You're going to have those big weeks where, Mahomes throws for 200 yards to Tyreek Hill in the first quarter. There's
right.
Those performances, and you're sitting pretty in those weeks.
Yes.
It probably doesn't happen very often, but if you have a Super Bowl performance like the Chiefs had, then you're in the real hole if you've got a double team like that. I wouldn't reach to make a double team, I guess, is the advice that I would give. I wouldn't say, oh, I got Tyreek Hill in the second round, I have to get Patrick Mahomes in the third round. I would still just draft Patrick Mahomes where he's valued. And if Patrick Mahomes falls to you and you already have Tyreek Hill, don't shy away from that combination, but don't overvalue anybody. Would be my advice.
All right, but certain quarterbacks are going to fall very early because there are always people who are going to take them early.
Right.
Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Are you as good? Are you coming out as good with, say, Justin Herbert or anybody like that? I mean, you're looking at maybe he won't produce on the Mahomes level or Allen level, but are you kind of getting an offset with your wide receivers that way, or running backs? Are you picking up points at running back and wide receiver because you concentrated on those early that you may be missing out on by taking a quarterback later in the draft?
I think so. I would say absolutely. Again, because you have 2 starting running backs, 2 starting wide receivers. You might have a flex in your league. I think that's kind of the standard now.
Everybody has flex now. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't forget, there's injuries, there's bye weeks, and because there's only one quarterback, you only have to replace a quarterback, assuming he's healthy all season, one time for one bye week. With the running backs and wide receivers, it's a moving target every single week with injuries and bye weeks. So you need more than just 2 competent guys at each position, and more than even a 5th guy with those positions combined for the flex. You need a 6th, 7th guy that you're confident in that's going to start 3, maybe 4 times in a season. So that guy, I think, is just as important, maybe, or almost as important as the quarterback. And I think the big answer to your question there of, am I making up points by emphasizing running backs and wide receivers early? Am I making up points by not taking the elite quarterbacks? Well, according to these projections, there are 6 quarterbacks that are projected between 305 points and 339.
Okay.
So that is I'm going to get out my calculator here. A difference of 34 points. There are 6 quarterbacks within 34 points of each other based on the ESPN projections. Over a 17-week season, 17 games, that's a difference of 2 points per week.
Okay.
If you get Herbert now, if you're comparing Herbert to Mahomes, I mean, it's a little different. Mahomes is projected significantly more than 339. But if you're, thinking about taking Lamar Jackson at 42nd overall, which is where his ADP is, or Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's ADP is actually 49. But looking at Jalen Hurts right now, according to Fantasy Pros, is the quarterback maybe to target because his ADP is 79. And according to the projections, I mean, he's in that group of 6 quarterbacks that's projected between 305 and 339 points.
Okay. All right. What you're saying makes sense. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate.
No, I like your questions. It's good.
But, I can see what you're saying, and I can see how it would be an advantage. And, I think you're right. You're picking up a lot more potential points if you analyze your running backs and wide receivers early and work on shoring up those positions early. So now, what do you if you do, like, say Justin Herbert broke out last season? What do you do then if a quarterback breaks out for you? You obviously have to keep a good close eye on the waiver wire as far as who's available.
Right. Are you asking, like, if somebody like Justin Herbert breaks out in September, do you pick him up?
Somebody like Fields,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was waiting for Justin Fields to come out.
Oh yeah, of course. Say Justin Fields really breaks out on you and nails it. And, yeah, I mean, of course you gotta watch the waiver wire. Well, you kind of already answered my question about complementary players on the team. You are basically being cold. You are cold analysis.
Right. Yes.
You're saying there is no favoritism here.
Correct.
Because I love the Bears doesn't mean I should be taking Justin Fields. And I'm not going to. I'm thinking about that. But all right.
I think the last point I want to make, if you don't mind, is this is true with every position, that you want to tier your players. You want to, before you go into the draft, maybe make 5 running backs and wide receivers because there's more players. Maybe you want more than 5. But you want to kind of place each player in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. And then you kind of have this is particularly useful with quarterbacks, because if you say you're feeling like, okay, I got 2 running backs already, I got 2 wide receivers, and you're coming around in round 5, and if for some reason everybody in your draft is using my strategy of waiting on quarterback, then you're like, oh well, and Mahomes is still available, or Kyler Murray is still available. They are in the top tier of quarterbacks along with Josh Allen.
Right.
Then you say, oh well, in round 5 or probably even round 4, getting a top tier quarterback is great value. That's where the value for that top guy really becomes great.
Okay.
But if you're
how long is too long to wait?
It really, I guess it depends on, how many teams are in your league, how you do have to, there is a feel out process. If players start, if owners start taking their backup quarterback before you have your starter, you're probably waiting a little long. You probably need to take the quarterback next. But you kind of, feel it out. It's okay. Well, the top tier quarterbacks are gone in round 5. I can wait another round. I'll get my flex starter, or I'll get my tight end if an elite tight end is still available. And then you do the same thing in round 6. Okay. This many quarterbacks are still left in round 6 for me. This many quarterbacks are in tier 2, and maybe you pick. If you're doing a snake draft, maybe you pick, second to last in the 6th round, but then second in the 7th round.
Right.
So that's why I can't say, well, you got to take it by round 7. You got to take it by round 8 or whatever. But generally, that's where I try to get it, around round 6 to 8. And then I usually take another quarterback shortly after that.
Okay.
Sometimes I like to do the platoon system if I have 2 competent quarterbacks and play matchups. But probably what I'm going to try and do this year is draft a Jalen Hurts, who's kind of unproven, but has a lot of who's high upside.
Yes, he does. But that's the thing. He's unproven. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get out of him.
Exactly. So he's a little bit of a risky pick. So if I take Hurts to be my starting quarterback around 6, 7, whatever, then I'm looking at, I want to get somebody who's very steady, who I know what I'm getting from him. Probably a Matt Ryan, who is he a top 10 quarterback or not? We're going to debate in a few minutes, but he is a guy that you know what you're getting from him.
Gremlin agrees with you. Never draft a quarterback high. Dave speaks the truth. Gremlin123, thanks for the comment. And, as I say, I'm going to follow Dave's advice this year. I'm going to be there as your quarterback too. Yeah, right. So I'm following Dave this year. If I tank my fantasy league, I'm going to know who to talk to.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll hear about it on the show. That'll be good. Obviously, this advice is not for 2 quarterback leagues. I don't know anybody who's in a 2 quarterback league, but I know they're out there. Do not wait too long to draft your quarterback if you're in a 2 quarterback league, because if you wait, you're probably starting, I don't know, some really unproven guys, and that's not what you want to do.
All right. About holding your nerve. Because you know how NFL drafts go. All of a sudden, a position just starts going crazy. It'll all of a sudden, everybody starts taking offensive linemen.
Right.
All of a sudden, everybody wants wide receivers. You start getting into these positions, and then everybody else starts panicking and saying, well, I've got to get it now, or else I'm not going to get, the guy I want. Okay, how does that play into actually waiting for the cornerback? I mean, quarterback, you still got to hold out your nerve on some of this.
You do, yeah. And you have to, again, it's a feel-out process. And that's why the tier system really helps. Because if you're if you're up in the 6th round and there was a run on quarterbacks and there's only one quarterback left among the guys that I was talking about, maybe of those 6 quarterbacks that were going to projected to score between 305 and 339 points, there's only one left, and you're not picking again for 20 picks or 10 picks or whatever, then I would probably not wait any longer. I would take the quarterback. But again, if there was a big run and all those quarterbacks are already gone in that tier that I'm talking about, the quarterbacks that are projected to score between 305 and 339, you might as well wait, because then there's a big gap between what that quarterback tier and then the next quarterback tier. You're probably better off getting another running back or another wide receiver, going somewhere else, and then one of the quarterbacks, 4 or 5 or however many are in the next tier, probably will be available when you pick next. That's kind of how you structure it and how you stay patient.
Are you saying they're getting their quarterbacks way too early, and there are so many good running backs and wide receivers left?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, take Patrick Mahomes first overall.
Take these guys. Yeah,
take them. I love it when you do that, because then I can get 2, 3 running backs in the top 25,
right?
And two wide receivers in the top 10, maybe, or top 15, and that's how I like to build my team. I know there are different ways of winning fantasy football, but I've just seen all too often quarterbacks overdrafted, and then those teams don't have the depth when they get injuries or when bye weeks hit, or they just don't have the strong second running back or second wide receiver. And to me, that's where you win your fantasy championship. You win it with your depth and your running backs and wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you, as I say. And I'm not the fantasy expert. Dave's the fantasy expert. That's why I'm going to be taking his advice this season. So, I'm going to be doing it. I'll let you know how my team ends up whenever we do end up drafting, which, I mean, let's face it, is going to be a while yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've played fantasy football for 10 years. Every person ever picked a quarterback early never do well. Yep.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, running backs, wide receivers first. Absolutely.
That's what Dave is. That's what Dave is advising here. All right. Well, how far do you think Matt Ryan falls before people start thinking, maybe this is the guy I want on my team? He's got a brand new tight end this year in Kyle Pitts. He's got a new offensive-minded head coach.
Yeah.
How do you see, maybe Matt Ryan is, one of those second-tier guys that you jump in on when you do get a chance at him?
I've always liked him. I've had him multiple times on my team. He's just a very steady quarterback. I mean, he very rarely misses a game. He's been a great producer, very consistent quarterback throughout his whole career. And he's past his prime. I think we've talked about that, but he's not, over the hill. And if you don't overdraft him, I think he can be very, very valuable to your team. I don't know if he's a top 10 quarterback. That's the question we kind of posed at the beginning. I would say no, he's not a top 10 quarterback, especially heading into the season without Julio Jones. I know the Falcons have other great weapons, but Jones has been his favorite receiver for a decade, and they've really had a great rapport. It seemed like, at least last year, Matt Ryan, really, there was a big difference between the offense and his passing ability when Jones wasn't in the lineup versus when he was in the lineup. So I want to see how he deals with no Jones, how he deals with a new offensive coordinator, new system. So I would not place him in the top 10. However, he could be a very useful guy if you're going with the quarterback platoon system, or if you go for maybe a injury-prone quarterback, a running quarterback, and he gets hurt. Matt Ryan is a very capable backup you can turn to.
All right, because a lot of things I've been reading are saying that, I mean, a lot of so-called experts are saying they think, and real experts are saying they think Calvin Ridley is ready to step up.
Yeah, I've read that a lot
does
too.
that make a difference with Matt Ryan? I mean, if Calvin Ridley steps up, you got Russell Gage stepping up. You got, as I say, Kyle Pitts is stepping in. You still got Hayden Hurst. You can run that 2 tight end offense that Arthur Smith enjoyed running in Tennessee. So does that, in your mind, does that make a difference with what you think you can get out of Matt Ryan?
A little bit. I think if Ridley becomes a legit number 1 wide receiver in fantasy, a top 10 stat producer, I guess, people are really high on him right now. Can he be a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy? It sounds like some people think he could be. So, but I guess my hesitancy with saying, well, Ridley's going to make the difference between Ryan not having any drop off without Julio Jones is last year Ridley already had 90 catches and 1,300 yards, almost 1,400 yards.
Yeah.
So without Jones, I know Jones played only half a season last year, and that's maybe why Ridley has had those stats last year. But how much more does Ridley give you? I mean, does he give you? And Gremlin here says draft him. Tom Ryan throws 4,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, but every year.
Gremlin's recommending that I take Ryan. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I love consistency in fantasy. I've drifted away from that. I've tried getting more risk reward players in recent years. Some success with that, some not. Jalen Hurts screams that to me, and I think pairing Hurts with Matt Ryan would be a great strategy.
Okay.
But back to Ridley, yeah. How much more do you think he can give? I mean, he already had 90 catches and 1,300 yards. I mean, does he go crazy? Does he go 120 catches for 1,800 yards? I mean, what's the cap for him? And then what does the cap have to be to make a difference with Matt Ryan?
Yeah, that makes sense. I know everybody expects Russell Gage to step up behind Ridley, but then, where do you go from there? So,
I think I bring this up every single week, but I'm going to bring it up again. The big key for the Falcons as a team, the offense anyway, and Matt Ryan's fantasy value is the red zone percentage. Again, they were 26th in red zone percentage last year. If that goes up with Arthur Smith, even if there's more, opportunities for running back scoring touchdowns, Matt Ryan's efficiency will improve. And maybe that's where the difference will be made up without Julio Jones and maybe with Calvin Ridley if there's more touchdowns. Ridley did have 9 touchdowns last year, though. So to expect more than that or project more than that probably is unfair. But I guess that's where maybe Matt Ryan can make the jump back into the top 10 if the Falcons are a better offense in the red zone.
Right. Well, as far as running back, I mean, they can't go any worse. Right. And I think that was a big part of their red zone problem. Teams did not respect the running game that Atlanta could throw at Jakarta's going. Yes, I know. And we're all thankful for that. But I think that's where Atlanta has to make it up with Arthur Smith is on the ground and Yeah, they got to respect your ground game, um, or else, yeah, they're gonna fill the pattern. They're gonna, you're gonna end up with, 5, 6 guys, in the secondary that, are gonna make things, make your life very tough. If Young Wei Koo is one of the top fantasy kickers this season, then
That's
Atlanta's
bad.
going to have problems.
That's bad. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. That's bad.
Is that
That's
right, Bozo? Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Mike Davis. I know we're focusing on quarterbacks this week, but I'll just mention with Davis in my running back research I did, he's the 24th ranked running back according to ESPN projections. So if he's a guy to target to start in your flex position if you're in a 10-team league, I guess a low end RB2 if you're in a 12-team league. But he's got an average ADP according to Fantasy Pros is 75. And the running backs ahead of him that are projected just, not many more fantasy points. Chase Edmonds, David Montgomery, Myles Gaskin, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins are the 5 running backs ranked ahead of him with projections. They're going, 27th ADP, 32nd ADP, 55th ADP. You can get Mike Davis similar value 2-3 rounds later.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. He's going to be on the board for a little while. So, because he just doesn't have the name that you expect out of
a starting running back.
Yeah, starting running back, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think he's going to be on the board for a while. So, and he has to make a difference in the red zone. Because as I say, if he doesn't, Ryan is going to have a problem trying to find receivers. Once he gets inside the 20, it gets tough to find receivers open because you have less room to be able to try and shake free of a defender. You're not getting Sergeant AR-10. Yeah, will throw for 35 TDs. He's confident in that. So. That's the key, I think, is the running game. And for Atlanta, as far as on the field, we're talking about real football, not fantasy football. But,
right.
So, yeah, Mike Davis is somebody you want to keep an eye on, too, as you get into your later rounds.
I think that's a great segue into your article that you wrote this week. We said Mike Davis is an underrated running back for fantasy heading into the season. It's going to be hard for Falcons. If you're in a league with all Falcons fans, it's going to be hard to get Mike Davis. Yeah. But if you're a Falcons fan listening to our show and you play with your college friends from Texas, then Mike Davis is the guy to target. But you went beyond fantasy players with your underrated 2020 players list and included a Falcons linebacker and a bunch of other names that NFL fans should know. Can we dive into that?
Yeah, I would love to. As I say, WordPress.com, football from A to Z.wordpress.com. I put my articles on there. Foyesade Oluokun, to me, he had a strong second half last year. I love players. They don't have to be the named guy. I like guys who I look at my television and their number is always appearing on the screen. Even if they don't make the play, these are guys who know where the football is going, have an instinct for the football. And I think he does. I think Oluokun does. He always seems to be in the right position to either make a play, help make a play. And he got better as the year went on last year. I think he's ready to really out. For Atlanta. And let's see, Deion Jones had a heck of a season. Oluokun actually had more tackles than Jones. So, and Jones makes a lot more money than Oluokun too. So, you got to look at that kind of thing. Oluokun's stepping up, and I think he's going to be a lot. People aren't going to be overlooking him as much this year. But some of the other guys that I put on my list that I think, maybe you do want to keep an eye on in fantasy. I do have J.K. Dobbins on my list of overlooked players because, you think of the Baltimore Ravens, you think of Lamar Jackson. But Dobbins is a heck of a running back. And I think he's going to get more of a chance to show it. He averaged 6 yards per carry last year. Very strong. So I think you're going to see a lot more of Dobbins. Rush for 9 touchdowns. I would like to see the Ravens concentrate more on Dobbins in their running game. I know Jackson does take off quite a bit, but, let's see more of him, and I think they're going to be all right. Buffalo Bills. I got a guy for you. Okay. Gabriel Davis caught 35 passes. He was a rookie last year, 599 yards. Caught 8 touchdowns, and Stephon Diggs caught 9 touchdowns. All right.
Yeah.
So here's a guy who produces, gets in the end zone. 4 of his touchdowns over 20 yards. So, this is a guy who stretches defenses and somebody you might want to look at. Definitely, I think he's going to be on the come this year, too. Then I had Brian Burns, Bilal Nichols for the Bears. Nichols is going to, another guy along the lines of Aluakon, played inside and outside on the Bears' offensive line last year, and as the season went on, just kept getting stronger. Kept making plays, tackles for losses, was great, on blitzing, putting pressure on the quarterback. Like him, the Cincinnati Bengals, who gets all the attention in the AFC North as far as safety?
Minka. Maybe Earl Thomas if you're, a bitter Ravens fan.
Well, yeah. Jesse Bates led all NFL safeties with 15 passes defended. He was credited with 15 passes defended in 2020. Intercepted 3. And he's had 3 interceptions per season his first 3 years in the league. This is a guy, free safety. Again, another guy who seems to know where the ball is going to be. Great at his instincts as far as reading the routes, reading the quarterback, and knowing where the ball is coming. Yeah. And, for a guy, 15 passes defended for a safety, because he's playing run help, he's playing pass help, you would expect that out of a cornerback. A safety, that's damn impressive. And Cincinnati also has Von Bell on the other side of the safety. So, look out for Cincinnati's defense next year in your fantasy leagues. You might be seeing a lot more than you want.
If I can make one point about Bates, you brought up the Steelers and their secondary. We had that argument years ago with Hunter about Terrell Edmonds. I get their brothers confused. Terrell is on the Steelers. Tremaine is the linebacker for the Bills, I believe. So Terrell Edmonds was the Steelers' first-round pick in 2018, and they really should have taken Jesse Bates instead.
Yes, they should have. Absolutely.
It all worked out in the end for the Steelers. They traded for Minka. They wouldn't have done that if they had Jesse Bates, but they could have had Jesse Bates in the first round instead of Edmonds, and that would have been a much better draft pick 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
Bates is a great player.
Yeah, he's showing up, and I think he's going to start getting Pro Bowl recognition going forward. As I say, he's overshadowed in his own division, and that's tough to overcome. But I think as the Bengals get better, if Joe Burrow is healthy, can stay healthy this season, then I think the Bengals start getting better, and more guys on the Bengals are going to start getting recognition. I think Bates is one of them who really needs it and is ready to stand out. So
they're in a tough division.
Yes, they are.
where do the Bengals get their wins? If you're counting on the Ravens still being an elite team, they won a playoff game last year. The Browns won a playoff game for the first time in a while, and we've been waiting for the Browns to arrive, and they finally did.
They did arrive.
The Steelers are going for one more run with Ben Roethlisberger. Where do those wins come for the Bengals?
That's the problem, because it's a tough schedule for the Bengals. Yeah, they got a division that's just murder to play.
Yeah.
Then they got to face the Los Angeles Chargers. They got to face the Chiefs. They're playing the NFC North next year, so they're going to have to face Justin Fields and the Bears. The Packers, who are regularly 11, 12 game winners every season.
Right.
So, Bengals really do have a tough go next year. But still, they got some guys who are showing that I think they're growing something good there, and they got a good base. And I think Bates gives them a good solid base on defense.
I agree. And hopefully for him, he gets more recognition, and hopefully he's not counting on the Bengals winning more games in order to get recognition. I guess that's my point. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber player this year, but I'm not convinced the Bengals are going to win more than 5 games.
No, neither am I.
Okay.
But I'm saying they're getting better.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they're getting better. They are getting better.
They're still behind the rest of the division because it's just an incredibly tough division.
Yeah, but they are improving. Yes.
The Steelers have the best defensive front in football, or at least they did last year. The Baltimore Ravens, you got to deal with that offense. The Cleveland Browns are up and coming. They feeling good about themselves. So, you got to really make a jump to even gain ground in that division. It's almost like you got to make some big moves just to keep treading water in that division, because you can sink to the bottom really quick. So
who else do you have on your list?
Well, I finished the list. Jeff Wilson, running back, and unfortunately tore his meniscus. Apparently was an off the field injury, not during OTAs. But he stepped up. He led the 49ers with 600 yards, 10 all-purpose touchdowns. So this is a guy who catches the ball and runs. I think,
we got some thunder here, and that's Roger.
Okay.
He's not a big fan of thunder.
I say Raheem Morris and Tevin Coleman don't stay healthy. And I think Wilson would have been a great would have really showed what he could do this year, because he doesn't have to compete for touches with Jerick McKinnon, but now he's probably going to be out till week 7. So unfortunately, and then I have the football team. Everybody knows about Chase Daniels, but Montez Sweat on the other side of that defensive line. Start keeping your eye out for Montez, because he really picked up 20 quarterback hits, 12 tackles for loss last season. I mean, that's not even taking sacks into consideration. He is not an easy guy to get around when you're running to his side of the field. And you already don't want to run on Daniel's side. So really 2 pillars that I think are going to be very tough. Make the Washington football team very tough. But they have Riverboat Ron Rivera as their head coach too. So we all know how Ron Rivera does so well on defenses and how great a defensive coach he is. He's really got some tools there with Sweat and Daniels on his defensive line.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm going to give you crap for a long time because you called Chase Young Chase Daniels.
Chase Young. Jeez. At some point, Keep watching out for it, Dave. It's going to happen. Chase Young. Yes, I know. Chase Young. And I wrote it Chase Young. I don't know why I'm calling him Chase Daniels.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah,
We
you
know,
wait. You wait.
we know what you meant.
It happens. Uh-huh. Yeah, give it a few years, Dave.
My other thought with you including Montez Sweat is, it's clear that your perspective is Chicago and probably the Big Ten, because I think down here in Atlanta, Sweat being in the SEC, I think has been on people's minds for a while. Maybe last year it was Sweat is finally living up to his potential because he was a first round pick.
He was. Well, remember when we were writing for Falcon Maven, Falcons Maven, we both thought Sweat would be a strong pickup for the Falcons.
Yeah.
As an edge rusher.
Yeah.
He was one of the guys we were looking at that the Falcons would be an asset for the Falcons as an edge rusher.
Right.
And they went offensive line instead with McGarry and Lindstrom. So, but I think, I think they missed the boat there. Not having Sweat and not having somebody who could work outside with Grady Jarrett inside. To me, that's still a big weakness of the Falcons, is you don't have anybody who you can count on. You could say going into the season, this is going to be our edge rusher. This is going to be the guy who gets after the quarterback for us. It's not there yet. And they didn't get it in the draft. And, we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, I think Montez Sweat would have been a great pickup for them. Another guy on my list, I know we were looking at too, was Brian Burns. Oh, we lost Dave for a second there. But, yeah, Brian Burns is also on my overlooked list because he had a big season last year for the Carolina Panthers. And, I do think that you're going to be seeing a lot more Brian Burns. 21 quarterback hits. And he's going to be the man on that Carolina defense, and the Falcons have to face them twice next season. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. But as I say, I would appreciate if people go to the site, take a look at the article, and I'm going to be posting a lot more of this as we go forward. So I would like to start making this site a little bit more visible to football fans. So I appreciate it. I'm not sure what I think he's still trying to get his dog under control. One of the final things I wanted to talk about today, and it's been a long time coming, and it's something I've thought about before, but the Hall of Fame Senior Committee will be releasing their nominee for the Pro Football Hall of Fame for the 2022 class. And I really expected this guy to, when they expanded the classes in 2020, I expected to see this guy get more consideration, and I don't know why he doesn't. And that's Mike Kent, offensive tackle, left tackle, played left tackle for the Falcons for 16 seasons, rarely missed a game, is considered one of the best technical left tackles. He wasn't overly strong, but he was tough to play with. If you look online, MikeKenFootball.com, which is a site that he and his family have put up. You look at the people who talk about Mike Kent being a Hall of Fame candidate, and you got to really take some of that seriously. Right now in the Hall of Fame, there are only 3 Falcons who basically have spent any healthy stretch of their career with the Falcons. They basically made their name in other places. However, they had a cup of coffee with the Falcons, started their career with the Falcons, or ended their career with the Falcons. So they get listed as an Atlanta Falcon, But
how many players is it?
Well, if you look at Claude Humphrey, you can count Deion Sanders because he did make a name for himself in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count Morton Anderson, though. Anderson kind of kicked everywhere.
He lives in Atlanta now.
Oh, does he? Okay. Then you got Tony Gonzalez. So,
okay.
I mean, but other guys they talk about, like Brett Favre. All right, well, they traded him after, Chris Goldman finished his career in Atlanta.
Atlanta Falcon great Brett Favre.
Right. Eric Dickerson, spent one season in Atlanta. Tommy McDonald. So, I mean, you got guys who either finished their career in Atlanta or started their career in Atlanta. And they're listed on the, Atlanta Falcons franchise as far as Hall of Famers. But, the Falcons are sorely underrepresented in the Hall of Fame. And I know the problem with offensive linemen is, the lack of counting stats.
Right.
And that's always the problem with getting offensive linemen into the Hall of Fame, especially linemen from an earlier era where, I mean, these days you got next gen stats, on NFL.com. You got Pro Football Focus, and they start looking at how many sacks did he allow. But that's only as good as the person doing the grading, which is one of the things that bugs me about Pro Football Focus. It's true. Sometimes I wonder if they're watching the same game I'm watching when their grades come out on Monday.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know who's doing their grading sometimes. But, Ken played 17 years, posted a streak of 84 consecutive games played at a physically demanding position. Let's see.
Two-time All-Pro.
Two-time All-Pro. How many? Actually, he was 5 times a second-team All-Pro. So, I mean, somebody who was respected around the league for a long time. But to get him mentioned, you have to write to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which is the difficult part because everybody wants to email now. And you actually, I'm looking for the address here right now, and I should have had this actually going into the show, but
so he's no longer on the ballot, correct?
He's no longer on the ballot. He would have to go in as a senior committee member, and as I say, I'm trying to find a Pro Football Hall of Fame address.
Meanwhile, my dog is sneezing in the background. He's cracking me up. Roger seems to have calmed down from the thunder.
Do you guys have any problem with the hurricane coming through?
Well, I don't know. It is gray outside right now. I really don't check the weather very often, other than looking outside.
Okay.
That's probably a better question for our listeners. Is Atlanta getting the hurricane this weekend? Tom wants to know.
That's true. But as I say, you have to write. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Just go. And I would like to actually see Atlanta, our site, our
channel.
Our channel, God, it's coming for you, Dave. One of these days. I would like to see our channel kind of get behind it and push for it. Because if you get enough support into the Hall of Fame, you might see Mike Ken being considered as a senior committee candidate. You have to write. The address is Pro Football Hall of Fame, 2121 George Hallis Drive, Northwest NW. So 2121 George Hallis Drive, Canton, Ohio 44708. And you can basically nominate anybody for the Hall of Fame. I mean,
can you nominate Justin Fields?
No, not yet, because he hasn't been retired for 5 years. So you got to be retired for 5 seasons.
Gotcha.
You want to go back and nominate Steve Bartkowski? I mean, have fun, but I don't think he's going to get in, no matter how much support he gets. But you look at the Mike Ken site, and as I said, MikeKenFootball.com. Go to the site. It's a really fascinating site, and what these people have to say. Because there are letters. No, man, Mike is disagreeing with me.
Maybe he's responding to me saying Justin Fields for Hall of Fame. I don't know.
There you go.
All right, Mike, what is the no to?
But you talk about, they got Jim Hannafin, who says, Michael Ken was my left tackle for my 3 years with the Falcons. Outstanding player, blessed with great size, quickness, and intelligence. And this is one of the problems. If he had been with a playoff team or a Super Bowl team, he would already be in the Hall of Fame.
That was the point I was going to make. That because there's no counting stats, and we've got this next-gen stats now, but offensive linemen probably more than maybe anybody, although I know quarterbacks, you really are judged by how much they win. But there are quarterbacks that haven't won the Super Bowl that are in the Hall of Fame. There's quite a few.
Quite a few. But it's a spotlight position. I mean, it's the position on the field. It's the most important position there.
Right, yeah. But my point I was going to say with offensive linemen is if you're on a good team, then it validates that you were a good player since there's no statistics.
Yeah, exactly.
But Mike Ken wasn't on a good team, so it's hard to.
It's harder to get him.
That's probably why he was overlooked.
Right.
Or has been overlooked.
Dan Hampton, Hall of Fame defensive end, 1980s Chicago Bears, a team that I idolized for a long time, says the fine left tackle of the Atlanta Falcons over the 1980s, the Bears had many games versus Atlanta and their excellent offensive line. In my estimation, Mike was the best player on maybe the best line in football. All right, that's coming from Dan Hampton. This is a Hall of Famer. He finishes up. He says, I knew Richard Dent would have his hands full all day, when playing the Falcons, because he was going up against Mike Ken. And there was a real respect between the Bears and the Falcons in those years. I know the Falcons didn't win a lot in those years, but the Bears had a lot of respect for those 80 Falcons. Mm-hmm. Chris Dolman, he was the prototype at the time. He moved well, great technique. Chris Dolman, Hall of Fame defensive end. Clyde Simmons, the player who didn't get the recognition he deserved. And you got all of these guys. Dan Deerdorf, Jeff Van Note. And by the way, Jeff Van Note, if you want to write in and nominate him for the Hall of Fame, I would strongly suggest that too. Because it's even harder for centers to get into the Hall of Fame. I think Jeff Van Note definitely deserves. But as I said, I would like to see our channel get behind this and get a writing campaign going into the Hall of Fame and push for Mike Ken, because he does deserve as well as any other defensive lineman. And, I hope we're getting the ball rolling on something here. Something that Atlanta fans can really be proud of, because he spent his entire career here. He is a Falcon.
Yeah.
He is, out of all the guys on the list that I've read that the Hall of Fame has listed, of at least, members who've played in the NFL, Ken would already be the senior member. He'd be the one recognizable name that Falcons fans would say, hey, he's ours. He didn't belong to another team. He's ours. Sanders belonged to the Cowboys too. I mean, Morton Anderson played for everybody. As long as they had a dome stadium, Morton Anderson played.
I was waiting for you to make the dome comment.
God, for crying out loud, he's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, my grandma could make it from 30 yards out, in a dome. So I mean, come on, you're kicking in a dome. If you spent your career in Kansas City or in Chicago at Soldier Field, a place where the wind really plays havoc with the football, then I'm impressed. I'm not impressed with dome kickers. But look at MikeKenFootballOnline.com, and I say, as I said, start writing in. Just take 5 minutes and write down a little something saying, I nominate Mike Ken for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, for the senior committee, and I think it can happen. So, I mean, I would love to see it happen. So let's make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have to do this a couple times over the next few weeks to give Ken and Van Noit a 5-10 minutes of the show and remind people to send in their letters, because that would be great to see them both honored.
Right. And as I say, unlike some of the guys who were on the list, that they are Falcons. They belong to you, Atlanta. All you Falcons fans, these guys belong to you. They never went anywhere else to play football. So, they've earned your support. And I think they should get it, because I think Mike Ken definitely deserves it.
I think we're going to end the show on that note. We're a few minutes past 1 o'clock here on the East Coast. Thanks for tuning in. Watch us on replay on YouTube. Search Atlanta Sports Unlimited on YouTube, Facebook. Give us a like on Facebook. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Reach out to us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. We'll be back next Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time.